Being charged with a fourth murder, this time Maureen Brainard Barnes, 25 years old, when she passed away, and one of the bodies found there on Gilgo Beach for many, many months now. It's been speculated, well, will he officially be attached to this one? And the answer is yes. Joining us to discuss, Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI special agent. Any surprise to you at all that this one was attributed also to Rex Heuermann?
No, no surprise at all. But I think there were some nuggets, that were gleaned certainly, and I also, for me personally, just looking at these victims, it was interesting just to really highlight who Maureen Brainard Barnes was. She was 25 years old, but she was also the mother of two, and she wasn't just a sex worker.
Hmm.
She was also a casino dealer. She did not do her business where she lived. She commuted and typically worked out of hotels. But on this occasion, she did what they call an out call,
Hmm.
as opposed to doing it in the hotel room. So um, anyway, I just felt like, the picture of her, I always call her the swoop girl because her hair was just, she wore it
Hmm.
swooped over kind of over one eye, and that mischievous smile. I just, to me, I just wanted to look at who this human was that he
Hmm.
supposedly took the life of.
Let's talk about some of the evidence that is against him on this. What's been standing out to you? Because yeah, there has been some new nuggets dropped as we've learned about this arrest and how they came to that conclusion.
Well, I think one of the nuggets, of course, this is one that had Asa Ellerup's um, DNA, a hair strand on her. And also, this is some of the details we're learning regarding the restraints. She had three restraints that were found, and the belt that was restraining the lower part of her body, which I thought it was interesting how detailed they were, right?
Hmm.
Ankles and legs and feet. So I was just kind of picturing this whole apparatus that would have been used, and then a hair in the buckle that was Asa Ellerup's.
Hmm.
So that was, I think, an important detail.
And that here we go again with the evidence that was found, the DNA strands that were found, Asa Elrips. This isn't the first time her DNA has been found, or her hair strands have been found on a body that attributes right back over to the Heuermann house. Not saying she's involved in any of this, but I am saying I don't know if it was the other way around and Rex's hairs were found. I think someone would be having a little more questioning going on surrounding them and their I don't know what they know, when they knew it, involvement, if there is any whatsoever. I'm still kind of baffled here that there hasn't been a questioning of Amasa Elrup even to this point.
Well, to your point about the hair, so Maureen Brainerd Barnes, a hair. Megan Waterman had two
Hmm.
of Asa Ellerup's hair. If you look at Megan Waterman, she also had Rex Heuermann's hair. And then interestingly, Amber Costello, which I think is such strong, powerful evidence, had Victoria's hair,
Hmm.
their daughter. And the
Yeah.
reason I think that that's so important to know is because it really just links him over and over and over again to these dead bodies.
Yeah.
Very specifically, when you find DNA and hair on a dead body that otherwise you would have never known that person, it's so strong.
Well, and what do we know about these bodies when they were placed there? Were these four bodies placed at the same time, or were these dropped off in the same area, location, in on separate days and separate incidences?
Well, certainly separate days and separate incidents. In fact, the first to be murdered of the Gilgo Four was actually Maureen,
Hmm.
2 years in advance of the next victim, which really begs the question, what was he doing in that 2 year hiatus?
Hmm.
Was he just not killing anybody? Or are there other bodies that could be attributable to him someplace else? We know that in regard to the Lisk, killings. Those came later, but I'm curious about that time frame,
Mhm.
2008, the end of '07, and before the next murder was committed in '09. What was he up to, or did he take a hiatus, much like Dennis Rader
Yeah.
took a hiatus?
I think we're making a really big assumption, assuming that there was a hiatus, just because we haven't necessarily found other bodies at that moment in time that we can attribute to him. Are you feeling that same way, or do you think there is a chance that this guy did take a hiatus? He doesn't seem like it just doesn't seem, I guess, from what we know of him in character, to suddenly, well, I got this appetite here, and now I don't. Now I do. After several, it just doesn't seem, I don't know, plausible.
Well, it's interesting though that some of these killers do that,
Hmm.
and they exercise control over this, mad passion to murder.
Yeah.
And sometimes things happen in their lives. I think it would be very interesting to look at exactly what was going on in Rex Heuermann's life during that time frame that might help answer that question. But certainly, law enforcement needs to continue looking at all the places he was in those years, because I think those would be the big years for possible other victims to be found.
I would completely agree, and God only knows where else and what else. I think this may be one of those where, for years and years to come, there may be more that continue to be attributed to him, even after he goes through trial for these. Let's talk about the alibi, if you will, that we heard from Asa Elrup, because she was brought back up in this again, and it's the same one that we continue to hear. And if it's legit, cool. But Jennifer, 2007, how easy is it for you, if even possible, to say, here's exactly where I was on what date? I mean, granted, you were working with the, I'm assuming you were the FBI in 2007. Is that accurate? Or was that in that time window?
Yes.
Okay, so you probably have a better track record of, or a way of tracking where you were, but for the average individual to know exactly where one was in 2007 when you went on a trip without your spouse or this or that, it seems like I couldn't tell you. I mean, I could maybe try and find like bank statements or something and go, well, maybe I can figure this out. But the excuse has been on all of these. She was out of town. She was out of town every time Rex Heuermann did something like this. And maybe that was his thing. When she went out of town, he killed. But it just seems like, okay, what's your evidence? What's your proof that you were out of town? Why don't we hear, oh, she was at this convention over here? I mean, it just seems like one of these statements that keeps getting made over and over, and we're just supposed to blindly accept it without any sort of evidence.
Well, in this particular case, she was able to come up with a bank statement. So
Okay.
the bank statement showed her at Atlantic City, New Jersey, at the Flagship Hotel, arriving on July 6, 2007.
Hmm.
And so this is what she's using to explain her whereabouts. Furthermore, that she entered the Skyline Tower
Hmm.
on July 13th, that hotel. Now, this is the interesting part, is she was purportedly there with her children on the 6th, and Rex rejoined them, or I shouldn't say rejoined, joined them, I believe on the 8th, they're saying,
Hmm.
8th or 9th. That's all very interesting, right? In
Yeah.
other words, he was going on the trip. I wonder what he told her as to why he couldn't make it on the 6th. So clearly, I think he planned this, even though they only charged him with second-degree murder and
Hmm.
not first-degree murder. Remember, all the other cases they've charged first and second.
Hmm.
This is the only case where they've only charged second. I've heard a lot of different speculations about that. When I looked it up, look, when I say when I looked it up, when I compared those two statutes,
Hmm.
it reads just like all other statutes in the other states for the most part. I think they didn't want to overcharge. I believe they felt they couldn't prove that. They were more easily provable in the other cases because of all that cell phone
Hmm.
information they have.
And that's what leads them to the second degree murder charge. It makes me wonder too a little bit, when we go back to talking about what Asa knew, what she didn't know, the allegations from some of the sex workers from back when they were having allegedly those parties in their home. Some allegations that she was involved in those parties, some saying she wasn't even there, some saying she was there, but she just was upstairs. It makes me wonder. I mean, I don't know. I think one would have to have some idea that your husband is into sex workers at the least. I think that's kind of like the baseline here. I don't know how she would not be aware of that, considering his lifestyle was found in the home itself. That there's something dark and devious about your husband in some way, shape, or form, at least sexually. Maybe not to the level of knowledge that you're where he's out there allegedly murdering people. But it does make me wonder a little bit about all these trips. So conveniently, I was out of town. Okay, were you out of town because he said, "Hey, honey, go out of town. I'm gonna go, satisfy my screwed up appetites over here." And she's thinking, well, maybe he's gonna go have sex with sex workers, but maybe not to the idea of she's gonna have sex with sex workers and they're gonna end up at the beach a couple months down the road.
Yeah, it's such an interesting situation, right? For all of us that I think are in healthy marital relationships, we pretty much know where our spouses are 24/7
Hmm.
for the most part. That's just a healthy relationship that you pretty much know where they're at
Yeah,
because you have open communication and you tell the person because you're not hiding anything.
yeah,
Uh, but in relationships like this one, gosh, I can't imagine that it could ever be under the category of healthy,
yeah,
and that certainly he was hiding a lot from her. But, there's a lot of people that say, no way can you be married to somebody for this long and have this long track record of having sex with sex workers and not have any idea. Secondarily, as you know, we've had a lot of new witnesses come forward in
mhm,
the last couple of months saying she knew she was involved.
yeah,
I still want to see proof, though,
yeah.
beyond what we're being told.
I agree. I mean, I think there that should come to light here. I do wonder though. Okay, uh, again, as far as we know right now, and it's been sitting like this since he's been arrested, there hasn't been a in-depth questioning of Asa Elrup, and that's directly from her attorneys stating that. I haven't heard any new updates since that statement's been made, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong on that. But the last one I had seen was that they have not sat down and talked with her, which seems just utterly ludicrous to me, considering the extreme charges that are against her husband. Why would you at least not want to sit down and find out something that would at least help in the prosecution of him? I don't know. I mean, it then starts to make me wonder: because there were some police allegedly involved in some of those sex parties, does she have knowledge of things that people just don't want to touch her? Like, well, let her be. Let's kind of let her be over here, do her thing, and we don't really need her for anything. We know she didn't have anything to do with the murders, but she starts talking, more names may come up. I mean, obviously, we know about the corruption that existed with the police there several years ago with the former police chief.
Right. Tony, the one thing that really doesn't make a lot of sense is when you read these court filings and you read these documents, it seems very clear they have had some conversations with her,
Hmm.
definitely because of the detail, right,
Yeah,
that we're seeing. Um, so there's kind of this contradictory
there
statement
is.
that's floating around. Um, However, I think she has been cooperative. That's what they've said.
Hmm.
And we just have too much detail to show otherwise. Remember, the police also are working with all that search warrant information. We have no idea what is really in that. But I don't know about you, but that looks like a hoarder pack rat house. And I'm not at all surprised they're able to find copies of things from '07.
That's true. In that house, you're right, and it also actually lends a little more credence to the idea of the hairs of Asa and the daughter being on some of the bodies. Look at the house. I mean, there's probably hairs on everything in that house. Quite honestly, it was a hoarder house prior to the investigation and prior to them going in and going through it. It's a hoarder house after. It's something that I don't think would necessarily has changed in much any way, shape, or form. But then when you have that level of filth, if you will, in a hoarder house, yeah, pretty much anything that comes out of there is going to have a lot of other things on it that it shouldn't have on it.
I agree. And hair, women's long hair, and she had long hair. uh, it doesn't surprise me at all that there isn't hair all over everything, and certainly on anything tacky
Hmm.
like tape.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense to me. And then, when you're looking at things like these buckles, those have the, places where a hair can catch,
Hmm.
if you will, that would hold a hair. So I'm actually really not surprised if they were living in a clean, they had a
Hmm.
maid
Yeah.
coming twice a week, so, this was not that. And so it doesn't surprise me that there was transference. Also, I see this as a modus operandi when I look at it, that these trips were planned, and the cat's away, the mice will play. I think what has a lot of people questioning that are these new witnesses that have supposedly come forth with all that information that they provided to that attorney. I want to see where that ends up. It needs to either be concluded that that's a dead end, they just made it up, or it's true. A lot of what was said seemingly had some pretty decent nuggets of truth,
Hmm.
seemingly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it made some sense.
No, I agree. First time in history that hoarding actually helps someone. Hey, it's Tony Brueski. If you like the podcast, be sure to like, subscribe, and press that bell so you don't miss any of our updates on the cases we're following for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast from True Crime Today. And thanks